Hello and welcome to ranking all commanders from Innistrad Crimson Vow. Today we're going to go through each legendary creature in Crimson Vow and rank them on a scale from S tier to D tier. Remember to like, comment, and subscribe for similar videos. Let's begin. Alright, first up we have Anya, Maid of Dishonor, a 4/5 vampire for 2 black-red. Whenever Anya and or one or more vampires enter the battlefield under your control, you create a blood token, and you can pay 2 and sacrifice a creature or a blood token to have each opponent lose 2 life and you gain 2 life. This is a commander more for a swarming style of vampires. Black and red are really good colors for vampires. Her being a 4/5 is really good. She doesn't have any other keywords, but I think she deserves a solid A tier. She at least goes into the list of any other red and black commander deck. Next up we have Dorothea, Vengeful Victim, which is a 4/4 flying spirit for white and blue. When Dorothea attacks or is blocked, you sacrifice it at the end of combat, and it has Disturb, which means you can cast it from your graveyard as an aura, which will, whenever the enchanted creature attacks, you create a 4/4 white spirit creature token with flying that's tapped and attacking, and you sacrifice the token at end of combat. Dorothea essentially just makes anything into a Geist of St. Traft. It's in really good colors for evasion, or if you want to go for a heroic themed deck, that would work out very well as well. It doesn't do a whole lot by itself and is easily removed, and casting it multiple times really hurts it. I'm going to put Dorothy in the B tier. Coming in next is Edgar, Charmed Groom, a 4/4 vampire noble for 2 white-black. He gives other vampires you control +1/+1, and when he dies, he transforms into Edgar's Coffin, which at the beginning of your upkeep, you create a 1/1 white and black vampire creature token with lifelink, and you put a bloodline counter on the coffin. If there are 3 more counters on the coffin, he comes back. You remove the counters and flip him over. This way, he produces an army over time, in addition to pumping out an army of vampires. He's not that great besides the Lord effect and the ability to slowly come back if he dies. I'm going to give Edgar a B listing as well. He just doesn't do enough to be the lead singer of most vampire decks. Next up we have Iruth, Tormented Prophet, a 2/4 human wizard for 1 blue-red. If you withdraw a card, exile the top 2 cards of your library instead. You may play those cards. This does not seem very good to me. My first thought was to use Labman, but you would have to destroy your commander and try and draw while your Labman was out. It would be good in a Prosper build, but it doesn't have the appropriate colors for it. Anything that's looking to cast from exile is pretty cool though. I'm going to give Iruth a C listing. I just don't see enough combo potential with this card. Next up, of course, we have Geralt, Visionary Stitcher, a 1/4 human wizard for 2 and a blue. He gives zombies you control flying, and you can pay a blue, sacrifice a non-token creature, and make a XX blue zombie creature token, where X is the sacrificed creature's toughness. This is really good in a toughness tribal build. Things like Char-X would work great here for a 17/17 flying zombie token. Unfortunately, Geralt's colors really hold it back, so I can't put it anywhere higher than a B listing. If it was blue and black, this would be much higher. Next up we have Grolnok, the Omnivore, a 3/3 frog for 2 green-blue. And whenever a frog you control attacks, you mill 3 cards. Whenever a permanent card you put into the graveyard from your library, you can exile it with a croak counter on it. And you can play lands and cast spells from among cards in exile with a croak counter on it. Grolnok seems very good. A lot of people are looking to build him as a frog tribal deck. I think a self-mill deck trying to win with Labman or Jace Wielder of Mysteries is the best go here. It's one of the few legendary frogs we have, so unless you're building Gitrog and you want to build Frog Tribal, he's your only other option. I'm going to give Grolnok a B listing here. I think he has some good combo potential, but I fear a lot of his decks are just going to be for memes. Next up we have Helena and Elena, partners. For 2 red-green, you get a first strike, reach, 2/3 with, at the beginning of combat on your turn, put X +1/+1 counters on a target creature, where X is Helena and Elena's power. That creature gains haste until end of turn. Giving anything you play haste and +2/+2 by itself is really good. You can of course equip something like Colossification onto Helena and Elena for some ridiculous plays. I really like this in a Grill Stompy build. I think this is one of the better red and green stompy commanders, and I honestly think, getting the ability to have a mix of Voltron and big beefy beaters makes Helena and Elena easily an A tier commander for red and green. Next we have Henrika Devathy, a 1/3 vampire with flying for 2 black, with the ability that at the beginning of combat on your turn, you choose one of the 3 effects that hasn't been chosen yet. You either draw a card and lose a life, each player sacrifices a creature, or you transform her. When you transform her, she turns into a 3/4 with flying, death touch, and lifelink, and you can pay 1 black to give each creature you control with flying, death touch, or lifelink +1/+0 until end of turn. This is another one of those keyword tribal commanders. I think mono black works well for this. All your vampire nighthawk like creatures will get a bonus from this. Mono black vampires is definitely playable. She's going into A tier. I also like the idea that you can transform her on later turns, so your opponents aren't very sure when you're going to do so. She's a solid commander. Next up, we have Jacobhauken Inspector. For 1 and a blue, you get a 0/2 Human Advisor with the ability to tap, draw a card, then you exile a card from your hand face down. You can look at that card as long as it remains exiled, and you can pay 6 from there. If you do, you transform him. So the paying 6 is part of the tap ability. Once you do transform him, he becomes Hauken's Insight, a legendary enchantment with at the beginning of your upkeep, you exile top card of your library face down. You can look at that card as long as it remains exiled, and once during each of your turns, you can play a land or cast a spell from among the exiled spells without paying the mana cost. This reminds me a lot of Braids just for yourself, but with a lot more setup. I think Jacob would be good if he wasn't so vulnerable as being a 0/2, and you want to get him out early to start tapping and exiling cards from your hand. If you had the ability to give him hexproof early on, and if you can defend him well, I think he would be a very cool commander. I'm going to list him in B tier as I think he has a lot of potential. Next up, we have Catilda Donhart Martyr, a 1 white spirit warlock with flying, lifelink, and protection from vampires. Catilda's power and toughness are equal to how many permanents you control that are spirits or enchantments, and she has Disturb. So if you choose to put her into the graveyard, you can cast her for 3 white and cast her as an aura onto one of your own creatures. This will give that creature +X/+X, where X is the number of spirits or enchantments you control, and it gets flying, lifelink, and protection from vampires. This looks like a very fun Voltron based deck in mono white. I think she's very cool if you decide to go with a spirit tribal build. Things like triplicate spirits are great for her, and I think this is one of the better mono white commanders. That being said, it is mono white, so it can't really get too high up on the list. I'm going to put Catilda in C tier. I just wish she had any other color. Speaking of bad colors, we have Oddrick, Bloodcursed. For 1 red-white, you get a 3/3 vampire soldier with a bunch of flavor text. The flavor text being, when Oddrick Bloodcursed enters the battlefield, you create X blood tokens, where X is the number of abilities from flying, first strike, double strike, haste, death touch, indestructible, lifelink, menace, reach, trample, vigilance, found amongst creatures you control. So you can have him enter the battlefield and create a bunch of blood tokens. He doesn't synergize with the blood tokens at all. Beyond that, you make a bunch of artifacts, which would be good for an artifact-based Boros build, but you already have to set up your board to have him come in and make a couple of these tokens. He's not good at all. He's going right into D tier. I don't list commanders in F tier because I believe every commander can be playable, but Oddrick is as close to F tier as a commander gets. Next up, we have Old Rustin, a 1/4 human peasant for 1 black-green. When he enters the battlefield or at the beginning of your upkeep, you mill a card. If that card is a land, you get a treasure token. If that card was a creature, you get an insect, and if it's a non-creature, non-land card, you get a blood token. This would be much better if it was any card you milled, you would get these effects, even if it was just once per turn, but as it is, it's just whenever his ability triggers, so I'm going to have to list him down in C tier. He just doesn't do enough. He can support a build where you do self-mill a lot, but you don't get enough benefits from him being your commander to justify running him over any other green and black self-mill commander. Next up, we have Olivia Crimson Bride, a 3/4 flying hasty vampire noble for 4 black-red. Whenever Olivia attacks, you get to return a creature card from your graveyard to the battlefield tapped and attacking. It gains when you don't control a legendary vampire, exile this creature. Olivia is one of, if not the best, commander card from this set. She reanimates reanimates anything you want. It comes in tapped and attacking. If those cards are legendary vampires themselves, you don't have to worry about the exile clause from her effect. Even so, if you reanimate something like a Blightsteel Colossus, it's not really going to matter much if they can't remove Olivia. She does super powerful stuff. She is great for a vampire commander deck. If you want to go that route, she's great for straight up reanimator. She 100% deserves to go into S tier. There's no question about it. Olivia Crimson Bride is S tier. Next up, we have Rokonstromkirk, a 1/4 flying vampire cleric for 1 blue-black. When he enters the battlefield, you put up to 1 target creature from your graveyard on top of your library, and at the beginning of your upkeep, you look at the top card of your library. You may reveal that card. If it's a creature with mana value 6 or greater, you transform him. So his ability lets you easily transform him into Crothis, Lord of the Deep, a 3/5 flying kraken horror with whenever Crothis, Lord of the Deep attacks, you create a tapped and attacking token that's a copy of another target attacking creature. If that creature is a kraken, leviathan, octopus, or serpent, you create 2 of those tokens instead. This is the Lord of the Deep commander people have been asking for. It goes wide, it cares about big, stupid things. It gives you a great reason to use Stormtide Leviathan or any other Leviathans. It is what Mako Tsunami would want as a commander. The card is good, it is powerful, and it is flavorful. It's going into A tier, almost S tier. Let me know what you guys think about this one in the comments. I don't know if this one should be S tier or high A tier. Next up, we have Thalia, Garden of Thraben. For 1 and white, we get a 2/1 with First Strike with non-creature spells, cost 1 more to cast. Thalia is a great hate bear. She is seen in a lot of modern, legacy, and vintage decks. She's a staple in Death and Taxes. She's not a good commander. She does slow down your opponent's non-creature spells, but Thalia doesn't do a whole lot. I think she definitely deserves to be in the 99 of other builds, but Thalia is not a great commander. She's going into D tier. Overall, as a card, she's probably A tier or close to S tier. As a commander, by herself, she is D tier. Next up, we have Tauren's Fist of the Angels, a 2/2 human cleric for 1 green and white. This is the set mechanic commander. So this one is training, meaning whenever this creature attacks with another creature with greater power, it gets a +1/+1 counter. And whenever you cast a creature spell, you get a 1/1 green and white human soldier with training. So with this, you're planning to go wide. You're planning on focusing on creatures with higher power than toughness to give +1/+1 counters to a bunch of tokens. You get a lot of the green and white token synergies as well. It's a good card, but it gets shut down really fast and does not recover well from a board wipe. I'm going to put it in B tier, but I can't give it anything higher than that. And last up, we have Toxil, the Corrosive. For 5 black, you get a 7/7 Slug Horror. With, at the beginning of each of your end step, you put a slime counter on each creature you don't control. Creatures you don't control get -1/-1 for each slime counter on them. And whenever a creature you don't control with a slime counter on it dies, you get a 1/1 black slug creature token. And you get to, a blue and a black, sacrifice a slug to draw a card. Toxil is a fantastic, powerful, late game commander that is set up to just come into play and win games. It controls the board well, it gives you card advantage. Once you start getting multiple slime tokens on your opponent's creatures every turn, you can effectively just win the game by hitting your opponents with a 7/7 3 times. Toxil is just so good. He's going into S tier. He needs to be in S tier. I don't see any world where this is not one of the premier commanders from Innistrad Crimson Vow. Alright nerds, that's it for today. Which commander from Innistrad Crimson Vow is your personal favorite? Were there any on the list that I missed? Let me know down in the comments. Remember to like, comment, and subscribe for additional content. Thanks nerds.